we have on our special guest speaker. So we want to welcome up David Ramirez, who is the second secretary of the U.S. Of the Cuba Embassy. And David has joined us in the past and provided a really, profound overview of the situation as it relates to Cuba and the response. And so we want to welcome the comrade up.
Thank you so much once again. Happy to be in the presence of so many good friends in Cuba, here in the U.S. At least virtually I can see many friends. So shout out to our colleagues and our comrades from all across the U.S. Happy to see Rita, happy to see David, happy to see Mark, happy to see the other Mark, happy to see Paul, happy to see Bob, Brandy, well, many friends that we have all around the U.S. John, Cheryl, Peter, and Destiny. So quite a few friends, and obviously people that have done so much for Cuba throughout the years and that are beginning to open their eyes to what's happening in my country and what the United States government is doing to the people of Cuba. So Mark asked me to come and speak to you and give you more or less a brief update about what's been happening in the past few days. First of all, I wanted to thank you all for coming to Cuba and participate in the Mayday Brigade. As you've seen, it's been one of the most popular and with the highest turnout in quite a few years. Some reports say that there were about more than 5.5 million people marching in the streets of Cuba, which obviously represents a very high percentage of our population. At the same time, more than 6.2 million people signed a petition that was put forward by our government, that the people of Cuba signed, which basically was a commitment to defend the country. And 6.2 million people represents basically 81% of people above 18 years of age. So that's a huge number and quite impressive. Honestly, a quite impressive number of people to sign something like that. And it basically speaks to the fact that still today, after so many years, so many obstacles, so many blockades, embargoes, however you want to call it, that people still believe in its government, that people still believe in its revolution, and it is up to us to bring down all of the manipulation, all the lies, all the fake news that are being put out there now more intensely than ever, and now more fiercely than ever. We got mainstream media every day putting out constant lies about my country, constant lies about what's happening. There are headlines that say that Cuba is a failed nation. Headlines are saying that there is a supposed dialogue that the U.S. government offered Cuba made some offers, and Cuba has not accepted them. And we are coming out and saying that this is totally false. This is not true. There has been no specific offer. There have been even governmental institutions saying that they have offered Cuba about $100 million in humanitarian aid, and our Minister of Foreign Affairs has been the first one to come out and say that this is totally false. This is a fable, and it's quite hypocritical to be offering humanitarian aid, even if you didn't, because the first institution, that the U.S. government is the first one that is responsible for the fact that people in Cuba need humanitarian aid. So it's quite ridiculous, quite ironic, quite hypocritical. What we say is, okay, we are, the doors of Cuba are open to any sort of help to the people of Cuba. But if you really want to be honest, if you really want to have a real discussion about how to help the Cuban people, then drop the blockade, drop the coercive measures against our country, and then we will see how we will do in the next few months, in the next few years, how our country will fare. So the main idea was to give you an update about what's been happening. You all are pretty well aware that on January 29th or 27th, January 29th, the U.S. government made public an executive order basically imposing tariffs against the people of Cuba, against the governments around the world that would dare to send people to Cuba, not only sell but also send us donation. And of course, declaring Cuba for the first time as an unusual security threat of the United States. And of course, because of the turnout, I wouldn't say because of the turnout, but as a symbolic measure of punishment of the Cuban people, they decided to announce another wave of measures against the Cuban people on May 1st. Basically, announcing what you might call the blockade on steroids, because they have basically announced that the U.S. government, not only the government itself, the State Department and the Treasury Department have the capacity of designating and sanctioning any entity, secondary entity from other countries, from other enterprises that dares to trade with Cuba is liable to sanctions. So a few hours ago, about 48 hours ago, the first entities that were announced were basically the Cuban mining industry, the Cuban group called Gaesa, and basically a person that is one of the main authorities of Gaesa. What happened a few hours later was that Cherry, that is a Canadian mining industry that has been in Cuba for decades, basically pulled out of Cuba because of the threat of being imposed sanctions for just being in Cuba. I have read somewhere that there is some sort of an ultimatum until June 6th to entities that are liable for doing business with Cuba to leave Cuba while they can. I'm not sure if this is true. Honestly, I haven't been up to date on that specific topic, but I wouldn't be surprised. So what we're seeing right now is the U.S. government pursuing a total, full blockade, physical, economic, financial, of any sorts. I mean, so if for some years people would say, oh no, there is not a blockade, there is an internal blockade, Cuba keeps on complaining that there is a blockade, but actually there is no blockade, and it is false. Well, right now the masks are off, and it would be highly hypocritical if somebody would say that there is actually not a blockade against Cuba, and still people go out and say it. The main purpose, obviously, is to topple the government by generating hunger, generating frustration, generating anger towards the Cuban people, so that they would, eventually, quote unquote, rise up against this popular government and topple it. That has been the objective for decades, but right now there is an imminent threat and a factual threat and a physical threat that there is an interest, and that there might be an interest of basically doing a military operation against our country, and what you call military intervention. I don't think there has ever been a precedent as open, as factual as this one, and that calls for the immediate importance of talking about the issue, calling out the accusations, being out there, spreading the word of Cuba, talking about the truth about Cuba, and The good thing is that our embassy is still here. We're still here. We are, open for business. As you say here in the U.S., we are working very hard to see, what new partners we can talk to, who can we reach out to, who else we can talk to, so that the truth of Cuba comes out here in the United States, so that the lies that are being told constantly, both by the government and both by mainstream media, which is totally aligned with the U.S. government, are at least pushed back against. And obviously, as we always say, we are totally grateful for everything that you do for Cuba, for going to Cuba, for traveling to Cuba, for speaking out for Cuba, for being there for us. The Cuban people are always grateful for what you do. The Cuban people, they follow very closely whenever you make a post online, when you go on social media, when you speak out in defense of our people. It gives us hope. It gives us, the possibility to learn that there are actually people here in the U.S. that don't think like a handful of people think in Miami or in the White House, and which is actually the majority, right? The majority of the people of the United States are against any sort of military operation against Cuba. The people of the United States actually impose are in favor of having a better relationship with the people of Cuba, having engagement with the people of Cuba. And I just wanted to let you know, just wanted to clarify that Cuba is a country of peace. We are a country of friendship, of solidarity. We, for many years, have been saying publicly and privately that we are willing to sit down seriously, on the basis of respect and equality with the U.S. government, and have a dialogue, a candid, honest dialogue, and to solve our differences. But that doesn't mean that we are not willing to defend our country. That doesn't mean that we are not willing to defend our sovereignty and our independence until our last Cuban in our country. And we are firm about this. We are a resilient people. We are a resilient community. We have been, unfortunately for us, but at the same time, fortunately for us, we have grown up in many decades to be, innovative, to figure out how to find a better way to solve our problems, solve our issues. And it's not because, only because of ideology, it's because it's in our blood to defend our country, our island nation. It's in our blood to defend our independence. We have fought and died for many centuries for our independence, and we're not going to stop now just because of the whims of a handful of anti-Cuban politicians. So I don't want to, whenever Cubans start talking, we cannot shut up. So thank you again for giving me the possibility of talking to you, and looking forward to hearing from you and answering any questions that you might have or any comments that you might have. And feel free to reach out. Most of you already are connected with us here at the embassy, so feel free to talk to us. We consider that this is a moment, and I'm speaking for myself and for our embassy, to not be preaching to the choir and talking to people that are not usually accustomed to our talking points, and getting out of the comfort zone and talking to our cousins, our brothers, our sisters that might have very different political positions, but might have the possibility of changing their mindset about Cuba. For us, that is very important, and we are trying to work very hard to figure out how to communicate better to the people of the United States, how to reach out to new audiences, and if we can do this all together, I'm sure that we are gonna find a way of reaching new people, new publics. So thank you.
Amazing.